Music is at the heart of everything we do at Apple, but more than anything else, we're fans. And just like you, we have strong feelings about the music we love most. And it's why we decided to curate the 100 best albums.
So join us as we unveil the 10 best albums to the world for the first time ever. We're joined by two incredible artists, respected and revered the world over.
She's released 3 amazing albums, the latest of which, Don't Forget Me, came out earlier this year. A Grammy-nominated artist about to embark on a sold-out arena tour. Maggie Rodgers.
Yeah. And he's a legendary record producer, writer, performer, martial artist, New York's own Nile Rodgers. Give it up one time. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, we're really happy that you're here. We're going to get into the serious business of revealing the top 10. I'll let you introduce the record, but just to set it up, I mean, this album showed up at a very important time.
Number 10, Beyonce, Lemonade. The year was 2016. I'm sure you kind of all remember where you were when this album, because we were all tuned in because it was the first of its kind, I think, where we got a complete album visually at the same time that we got the audio. We also had the backdrop of what was going on in Beyonce's personal life, right, which we had never been privy to any of that. That was kind of a guarded space.
Yeah.
And she was in some ways forced to address it, and she leaned in, and it was massive.
Groundbreaking. I mean, the first time I feel that artists of that magnitude with that much attention on them decided to take the narrative and really try to control it and share what they wanted to share and not be at the mercy of 5 billion eyeballs and opinions and press and media and social media, you know?
To control of the narrative.
Yeah.
This album was so monumental, and I say this with a huge amount of respect because I know what it takes to achieve what she did here. It went beyond record making to me. And I thought to myself, now what do you do?
Yeah.
I thought that you really couldn't achieve more as a recording artist and as a cultural icon, and to make Black music part of the American zeitgeist in a way that was just
unapologetic.
Right.
Wow,
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me?
I was in college when this record came out, and I remember hitting play on my laptop in my apartment, like my 5th floor walk up in the East Village. And it was the first time I skipped class because I was halfway through and I was like, I'm not leaving. I have to be here today. Like, it just was the most, I just had never seen anything like it.
It was a where were you moment. I mean, I remember I watched it with my wife. We waited for it to come on. We were like, let's see where this goes. And to exactly the same thing. Halfway through, we were just, I looked at her, she looked at me, and we're like literally lying on the couch like we're watching a movie, like eating popcorn. Like, we're not turning this off. It was unbelievable.
Beyonce has a way of bringing not just all popular music together, but all the aspects of Black music, which is popular music as we know it in America today, right? She talks about being country. You can't take the country out me.
Right.
There are some real elements in this album which allude to what was to come.
Right.
I mean, Daddy Issues to me is
So
a Cowboy Carter record, just waiting for a home.
Right.
She was showing us all the elements she was trying to embark on and getting ready to unveil.
What I hear more than anything is her power and the way that that's coupled also with her vulnerability. I mean, there's such a exposition of female power on this record. I think about Partition and how just vivid and she's so in control, but then there's songs like the opening, Pray You Catch Me, like her vocal is so delicate.
Or like Hurt Yourself when her and Jack are just trading.
It's
And
just
Jack's
crazy.
just getting out of her way.
It's like she's the greatest male rock star.
Right.
We are at number 9, and an album that, man, if I got stories about when this album came out, I think I probably dubbed more copies of this album on cassette as a young teenager and gave them to my friends than any other album. I owe Nirvana and their management probably about 350 New Zealand dollars. It is Nirvana, never mind.
In my neighborhood, I'm hearing this on the radio. The hip-hop stations were playing Teen Spirit on the radio.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
The Black stations were playing this record.
right.
I skateboarded. I was a kid, the mixed kid, and the guys around the way would be like, oh, you skateboard, you corny. Yo, they were playing this in the hood.
Yeah.
Right.
Dudes that, I listened to AC/DC. I grew up listening to Zeppelin. I listened to all these records growing up. Those weren't records that got played around the way.
That's right.
This was it was a new time.
Lots of people talked about the sound of the record, how
Yeah.
big it sounds, and there's no question that Andy Wallace and you know, Butch Vig and ultimately the band, you know, worked on making something sound as big and professional as possible. But the songs.
I mean, that for me, I was born the same month Kurt Cobain died. So I don't like have a moment of remembering when this record came out. But I remember the doorway into this record because distortion is such a therapeutic and important tool in creating music because it does something to your body sonically.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that this kind of music was something that I was allowed to have be a part of my world growing up because it was so intense and because it was of this rock music that like I didn't think was for me. But this record, the melodies were the door in. And it made me know that like even though I was like growing up in rural Maryland and playing banjo, that this was something that I could access.
When I think about the impact that the song had on the world, the main thing I remembered the very first time I heard it was the dynamics.
Yeah.
The dynamics were incredible.
Yeah, the quiets and the louds and
Right.
the intensity of
Yeah.
it. Totally.
That when it was soft, you were paying attention on a level like you probably normally wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think that the vulnerability of this record, coupled with the intensity of the way it sounded, and the cultural moment that it bled into,
Yeah.
like it touched something.
I'm not going to lie, I'm getting a bit emotional just talking
Yeah.
about it because, you know, in 1991 when this album came out, it made everyone who heard it and was connected to it feel like we had a band, like a real band that was ours. And all the things we liked that seemed disconnected and seemed out of place and not being taken seriously, it's like, oh, you're taking us seriously now.
They wanted to be great. They wanted to write great songs. They wanted to give us all of the feels.
It was real.
Right? It felt really real.
I still remember my band and the people around me talking about this, living it and playing the down.
Because also Dave was playing a disco beat on that.
You know, those turnarounds, those drums.
He tells the story. He tells the story.
Yeah.
Tells
He
the
told
story
Pharrell that story.
He was
Yeah.
copying my band.
That's right.
That he was
right.
copying Chic.
Yeah.
He said, I'm copying Tony Thompson here. I know.
The knock-on effect of a Nirvana is that, hey, if you say it in a very real, authentic way,
Yeah.
and your timing's right, and where our ears are open and our hearts are open, you might get us.
At number 8, the incredible, incomparable Amy Winehouse and Back to Black. One of only 5 women to walk away with 5 Grammys in one night.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And this album, they say, took, I think, 10 days to record.
I can kick it off with a quick observation. This is just heartbreak for 35 minutes. Unrequited, painful heartbreak, made at times for the dance floor, at times to sing along to, at times to sway to. But don't let the joy of the music get it twisted. The songwriting is coming from a very painful place.
Yes.
I have 3 things to say. I've organized this in my head. The drum sounds on this record
Unreal.
are
Exactly.
the snare sound on this record is insane. Love is a Losing Game is so messed up. Is so her vocal performance, there's this thing that Amy does at the end of a phrase where she will just let her vocal hang.
Yeah.
And on that song in particular, it just is the craziest thing I've ever heard. This record is 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
That is something that I will never. 11 songs, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It's about as perfect as you can ask for an artist to pour their heart out on a record and not make it feel as a listener that I'm too close, that it's
Oh my God.
too vicarious, that I'm being exposed too much to your pain.
Right.
She dressed it up so fabulously.
It's inviting, which is the combo.
Yeah, you feel the angst and the pain. This is really when I first became aware of her. You feel the pain and you feel the joy. The joy is outstanding, and the pain is pretty incredible.
But the sense of humor is there. It took the world
like sense of humor.
It took the world 3 weeks of dancing to rehab to figure out it's a really dark song. It's a really dark song.
When I'm always, and I still listen to this album a lot.
Yeah.
I was from the beginning struck by how I felt like her voice was like delivered to us from another time. Right? Like her vocal styling and what she was doing is timeless in a way, right?
But to do that, when so many times when I hear an artist try and reference something in the past, I'm always like, I would kind of just rather have the original thing,
Right.
but like this is cool. But to do it in a way that actually took all that tradition and then added something to it and moved it forward and did it in this way that was so sparkly, even in all of its just heaviness.
Where were you the first time you heard number 7? I mean, this is definitely a question that most people have a pretty vivid answer for, because as albums go, this is a movie. This is one of the most beautifully curated, created, structured, and track-listed albums of the modern era. It's another album that came out in the 2000s, which is a beautiful thing. It is Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City.
I just remember coming off Section 80, which was the first project. Kendrick Lamar was highly anticipated, the release. You know, hearing that Dr. Dre was going to sequence the album, the producers that were on the album. The backdrop of where Kendrick Lamar comes from in Compton just had delivered so much hip-hop that there was a lot of pressure on this kid. The ability to deliver stories, bars, energy, performance on recorded material.
I feel like I can see this record when it comes on. You know, it really hits you in a different way.
Yeah, and in the tradition of the great hip-hop albums, too, you know, he delivered on a black consciousness that you don't always get in hip-hop, right? And that's why I'm really proud of the fact that it ranks where it does on this list, right? Because that's something that, if you've watched this hip-hop thing or been in anywhere near it in its purest form, it was about communicating what is going on in our neighborhoods.
There's a vulnerability to this writing, I feel, with Kendrick, and he's still doing it with every album, he has a good long look at himself before he makes music, I feel. There's a lot of self-examination that goes on as much as there is examining what's going on outside of his own space. Does that make sense?
The thing that I remember most was hearing this for the first time, and I actually just happened to be in Los Angeles. And I happened to be near where my grandmother used to live, which is on the Watts-Compton border. And I was driving down El Segundo, and somebody said, "Hey, check this out. This is a new Kendrick record." Okay, let me hear it. And I was like, are you kidding? I experienced something for the first time in a unique situation.
Especially that album.
It was a unique record.
Because the stories being told on that album are happening literally outside.
Around you.
It's so insane.
Right around you.
It's very timely. Like, I mean, even the musicality of the album, because you have, in the hip-hop tradition, there's the skits, right? There's the things that go in between the songs that kind of paint the backdrop. The album artwork cover, it clearly says a movie by Kendrick Lamar. Like, it's clear that he's leaning into being visual with it. But the whole musicality of it and how hard-hitting it is at the same time is just miraculous and just a feat. It's a major undertaking, too.
I remember being on a rooftop and doing a little bit of underage drinking, and somebody put on Backseat Freestyle. And I was like, what is this? Like, just, because I think that that's the thing about this record. There's the skits and there's the storytelling and there's his unbelievable wordsmith, but there's also crazy hooks.
Crazy hooks.
There's hooks for days on this record.
And multiple personalities, even on that one song, you know, biatch! You know, it's just like, what is that voice?
The drama is just...
Yeah, he brings it.
It's so playful at the same time as having so much storytelling and vulnerability.
That's a really good point. It's as heavy a story as it is and as important it is that you listen to every word on that record, it's playful.
It's entertaining.
I do have a question, because I love this record. Obviously, it was so important to me. I was moving to New York. But To Pimp a Butterfly, for me, is the record for him. So or is my personal, that's what I would put forward. So I'm curious about why Good Kid, Mad City.
To Pimp a Butterfly actually caused a little bit of division in the hip hop discussion. And I think it's because To Pimp a Butterfly is dense and takes more work.
Yeah.
This Good Kid, Mad City is laid bare for you. It's very, you know, for those that don't want to have to dig in, there's things that catch you right away. Now it's layered, so you can get more if you would like to go deeper and kind of analyze. To Pimp a Butterfly, I think had a lot of layers, and I like To Pimp a Butterfly also. It's similar to his Mr. Morale and Big Steppers that just dropped. Right, which I love
that record.
but a lot of people just weren't ready for how deep he went on his own therapeutic journey.
It's almost like Kendrick had to complete and release Good Kid, Mad City as a sort of perfect hip-hop manuscript in order for him to go and do all these other things that he wants to go and do creatively and spiritually, and figure out what kind of artist he wants to be album by album by album, because it is kind of the only one of its kind in many respects if you think about it. Like every one of his albums has been very different.
Do you think it has to also do with community? I mean, this is such a record of Compton for Compton. And by the time this record became as popular as it did, Kendrick belonged to everybody. In this way that like The Secret's kind of out.
That's a good point.
Coming in at number 6, Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life.
I mean,
Well, this is 2 records.
basically.
It is.
This is a mega piece of art. This is something that, when I think in terms of Stevie Wonder, this record achieves something compositionally that is even a milestone for Stevie. I mean, this is Stevie's Thriller, if you will.
Is it true that he was actually walking away from music before he made this album? He was planning on leaving. He'd had a real run with Innovisions and Talking Book and a few other albums, and that he had decided he was going to go and pursue something very different, more meaningful in a different way, and that it was only after he came back and decided to re-sign with Motown, that really legendary deal at the time, and then this was the first thing I think he did from that new deal. But I think he was done before.
Why do I feel like artists always make their best records after they quit?
You know,
Think of the anticipation surrounding Stevie coming back with a record and deciding to make a double album, well over an hour and a half long, you know, taking 2 years or whatever for it to come out, and for it to achieve what it achieved and to go beyond even everyone's expectations.
Songs in the Key of Life just, I mean, for me, no matter what instrument he's playing, he sort of speaks with the same voice. It's a real unique gift. His singing, his harmonica playing, his keyboard playing, all sounds like Stevie Wonder. It is the weirdest thing I've ever experienced.
The horn arrangement on Sir Duke is the one on this record where I always am like, how do you write that? But it's got that same joy that he's playing the harmonica with. I mean, it's so intricate and so present. And I think also when I look at the track list for this record, Isn't She Lovely is now one of those songs that is just, it's part of the canon. It's one of those songs like Amazing Grace that that no one wrote and belongs to everybody. Except Stevie Wonder wrote it on Songs in the Key of Life. And it just, the other thing I want to talk about with this record is this album cover. Is so fantastical and bonkers and like playful. This font is this like a cursive
and back
font
then,
with him like in the middle.
Think about how much they just wanted to market and promote this to success. They just wanted this album cover to have Stevie Wonder new album on it, right? And it's really hard to decipher. So it's
it's iconic.
You know, he still continues to have such an enormous presence and influence on artists today, young and established. And, you know, you talk to Tyler, the Creator, about Stevie Wonder. You listen to Tyler's music and the chord progressions and the way that he moves in that way.
I was born in 1975. This came out in 1976. And I don't remember being aware of music. There's like 2 albums that you're like, those are the first 2 album artworks that you see in your life. One is Songs in the Key of Life, was just always sitting right there. and the other one was Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. Those are my first memories of, oh, that's an album.
Yeah.
Is that a burning sun? Is that what am I looking at, right? But then when you get into the actual composition and of music, the composition of lyrics, so many different ways that I've been brought back to this album, from Coolio's Gangster's Paradise to, like you said, Isn't She Lovely, and and I mean, there's so many songs on here that are just Have a Talk with God,
so
Love's in
funky.
Need of
Yes.
Love Today.
Yeah.
I play those for my 9-year-old now,
Yeah.
right? The way he took love and politics and what was going on at that time in his life and what was important to him and put this into this beautiful masterpiece. I mean, that's why it's ranked so high on the list. I think everyone gets that from this album.
Songs in the Key of Life just exists as this unbelievable piece of art. I can't imagine a world that doesn't have Songs in the Key of Life in it.
This is a special one for me. It's a modern album. It's an album that came out after the streaming era began. It felt very much like its distribution was in line with modern distribution. It landed in a unique way. But what's truly special about the album sitting at number 5 is that the more that and I believe anyone who loves it listens to it, the more it continues to reveal itself in ways that I could never have imagined. It's Frank Ocean and Blonde. This album, this is music put on canvas. I look at the canvas through different light at different times of the day, depending on how I feel, and I see strokes of color I never saw before or even knew existed. There's so many layers and thoughts and emotions and hooks and ideas that all somehow make sense different every single time. And I don't know how else to describe it, but it is just the most beautiful piece of art, this album for me.
It's great. I remember walking through the doors of Electric Lady. I was walking in, he was walking out, and I wanted to say, yo, you know that new album you got? But I was actually fanboying. I didn't even know what to say.
Wow.
Because I was so impressed. It's an amazing piece of art.
It's you know, my love for what Frank Ocean does, obviously, you know, the way he writes is so hip hop.
Yeah.
Right? It's so a part of it, but also, just like when we were talking about Stevie, chord changes, melodies, you know, vivid lyrics, wordplay, like he taps into all of it. It feels so easy when we get a project from him.
When you said someone made that, I feel like that about this album. I don't know why he made the decisions he made to do what he did, arrangement, melodically. I'm like, who puts that there? And I love it so much.
Well, when I think about this record, I think about intention. I mean, his intention is razor blade sharp on this record of the things that he chose to leave on the canvas.
And leave
like
out.
if we're talking about Stevie Wonder, there's so much maximalism in Songs in the Key of Life.
Yeah.
This is such a exercise in restraint. And the choices he made, the spelling of the word blonde, the world-renowned photographer to
He's a
take the
visual
cover
artist.
without his face. Like, whenever I think about this record, I picture the Pro Tools session because I want to know, were there only 3 tracks, or were there 20 and they were all muted?
I think there were.
I want to know.
I think there were 200, and I just don't think
Right, and I'm
we
just
actually hear them all in one human sitting. I think
Like, is there a version with
it's-
drums?
Right. But if you also think about this album, it goes through. Well, you go through the same experience in terms of who's on this album. Beyonce, James Blake, Tyler the Creator. The list of collaborators is incredible, and yet
But it's
I
quiet.
never once listen to this album and go, "That's the James bit," or "That's the."
Right.
that-
It's
never.
so tightly woven.
Even Beyonce, her harmonies and her beautiful, very thoughtful, wonderful vocals at the end of Pink and White.
I didn't even know she was
But,
on this
right, it
record,
took
and
me
I've heard this record so many times. I'm like,
Really?
And now you
I
do,
had
you'll
no
hear
idea.
it, but it's never distracting away from what Blonde is. Blonde is its own identity. That's the
Right.
crazy thing about this record.
Well, and it's another one of those one-of-ones. You and I talk about this because people come along and they think that they're in the right space to try to do this in their own way, shape, or form. And it's like,
Are you talking about the danger of influence?
yeah, it's like,
I can do that. It's like, no, you can't.
It is
you
funny.
can't.
We are in this moment now.
no.
You can't do
I heard somebody describe a record. I was like, "What's it sound like?" And they were like, post Frank. And I was like, got it.
That's 100%
like,
right.
That's exact. I know everything I need to know. I mean, this record feels like smoke rising. Like, it is so delicate and so unpredictable and so precise.
I love it. It came out in 2016, and contrary to how we, felt in the past about these lists and how a certain amount of time must pass before something can be considered timeless, I think we know in our heart, if we really love music, the day something comes out, that it's timeless. And I think this is one of those albums that sits in the top 5 of the 100 best albums of all time, rightfully so.
Just 4 more left. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to go see this movie, and I'm not sure I was supposed to be listening to this album, but I did a lot. Prince, Purple Rain is at number 4.
The greatest artist of our lifetime?
Yeah.
I think I can pretty much say that.
You can say it.
Talk about an album that catches an artist at a specific moment.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such a moment in the arc of his career, but also that created so much iconography.
Yeah.
I mean, the suit and the motorcycle and
It's so conceptually ambitious.
Perfect. Yeah. It's perfect. He's, when you think about artists who've had such a major impact on your life, my relationship with Prince was a very peculiar one because we were so regular, which is hard to say because he's so irregular. He's so
abnormal and.
But the music, the film, I mean, just everything around this record was just so amazing, and it just put me in such a place of respect and happiness, and just like, man, you're not only are you keeping the tradition alive, but you're taking us to another level.
There you go.
I was just so proud to be in the world the same time he was in the world.
I think everybody is inspired and influenced by things that you love, and you hope that it's going to give you that extra kick, that extra bit of fuel to make something greater. It's a beautiful part of the experience.
And I think that there is something about Prince and about this record that, like, when you encounter it, he's showing you how to love yourself. I mean, there's so much self-love in the way that he held himself to this standard. And he sort of said, I'm going to be the best, and, like, I'm going to show you. And the way that he topped himself over and over and over again, it's so inspiring to encounter, of just that you can hold yourself every day to that standard. Like,
it's beautifully put.
Yeah, man. So this album, when you go through it track for track, you get the soul, you get the pop,
The rock and roll.
you get the rock and roll.
Yeah.
But not only that,
Guitar tone.
you get the guitars,
Yeah.
but then you get the squalling church vocal. You don't even know how to record like that unless you've had that experience before. Like, there's things he does on this that if you didn't live it, see it, touch it in a black spiritual way, you don't do that. And then the audacity that it's a film and it wins an Oscar. Right? And in some ways it's a biopic, right? Like, it's so many things, man. And for me, Prince is my favorite artist of all time.
Yep, same.
Like, without a doubt. From like, literally, you could point to everything that he does. He actually plays the instruments. He actually writes the song. He's actually singing on stage. He's actually doing his own art direction. He did his own fashion design. Like, that was all him, soup to nuts.
Yeah.
That's why it's number 4, man.
And the greatest performance of all time, he's performing the song Purple Rain during the Super Bowl, and it starts raining. I mean, come on. Come on.
I know, right?
Come on.
All right, number 3. I know what you're thinking. I think I figured out what the top 3 are. You've definitely figured out 2. And number 3 is the Beatles, Abbey Road. To me, it is the Beatles at their absolute apex creative level, getting along beautifully, having a great time
Getting
making,
along beautifully.
which, as we know now, wasn't always the well. As we know now, you know, it's something to. I think it's a nice thing to remember when you hear this record that they had fun and had a great time, and it flowed really well because it brings the songs to life in a different way. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot shown in Get Back, and it was like, okay, interesting, dynamics are shifting, but this was a joyous record.
There's something about the Beatles that's always really magical to me. I learned to play guitar, believe it or not. The first song I ever actually completed was a Beatles song on the guitar. I knew at that moment that I was going to be a guitar player.
Wow.
Prior to that, I played the clarinet.
And kicked ass in the martial arts ring.
One's much cooler than the other.
Kung Fu clarinet.
Kung Fu clarinet.
That's funny.
I had to switch to guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, the happiness that you talk about this record, that it evokes, the fact that they were really getting along as a tribe.
And it was bittersweet. I mean, if you've read any of the articles written or heard any of the things the band, you know, Paul or Ringo talk about, they kind of knew that it was reaching its natural conclusion when they were making this record.
Obviously, I learned that later.
Yeah.
Right? Reading articles, watching documentaries. And then when I go back and I see the album cover, it's like, okay, this was a moment that they were in step, if you will.
I mean, it's a piece of iconography that you can't ever undo. And it's also something that everybody
Abbey
has
Road wish
access to.
they could.
I know, right? Oh my
500
gosh.
people that walk across that thing
I
every
know,
single
but
day.
like anyone could be that guy.
Right.
And yet, like, when I look at the track list for this record,
It's crazy.
the beginning of Come Together, to be able to start a record with dynamic and texture, and there's something so mysterious about the way this record opens, but then you get the audacity to write Octopus's Garden is insane. I just want to say that and have it be just perfect.
And also, how about George showing up at number 2 with one of the greatest
Something- oh my
Beatles songs of
gosh.
all time
Right.
at a time when I think he was still trying to figure out how I get in between this John, Paul love
right,
affair.
like
Yeah, how do I get a song on the record?
Right.
right, and which is so of like what was to come.
Yeah.
But also, Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah.
That's in the canon.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
next to Amazing Grace.
Right.
That
Yeah.
belongs to everybody. To be able to make one of those songs, it's just that's everything.
It's something about the way the Beatles wrote, performed, released, and shared this music that it outlives almost any other. And I don't want to create hierarchy of art and artists, but it almost outlives any other career. But Maggie, just quickly, like, as a songwriter, what do you hear when you hear Beatles songs, when you're first introduced to them and you listen to these albums and you're striving to find something to say and you hear how they say it?
I mean, to me, there is something so special about making music where you have a song that is describing some of the greatest human pain or sorrow next to a song that you would happily play for your 3-year-old, next to one of the greatest love songs, next to, it's timeless, but not just in the way that it will last forever, but in the way that there's something for every moment of humanity and every human feeling on this record.
Love
It's
that.
for people of every age.
But I think that's why it got voted so high.
Yeah.
Because of what you were just articulating, right? Because, you know, while there's so many great Beatles albums, right, this album takes you on a journey that is, as you said, it's personal, it's, you know, intimate, it's also for everyone. It's workout music, cleaning the house music, hanging out with my family music. Like and you could just put this on at pick a thing.
Yeah, I think out of anybody, and I think when we look back on this, you know, this crazy existence, and if you think about it in terms of the life we're living right now, this era of existence, the Beatles start to finish, and there has been a finish now. We have the last song. I think that is the songbook of life. The amount of songs that have stayed with people as they've lived their lives, to your point, played at anniversaries, weddings, funerals, fallen in love to, broken up to. There are lots of songbooks that speak to many times in life. I think they have the songbook of life.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the top 2. And I have to assume that most of you knew that this was going to be somewhere in the top.
But you probably thought it was going to be number 1.
Right.
However, it's number 2, Michael Jackson Thriller.
35 million albums in the first year, Maggie. in the first year.
I can't
35
fathom
million in the
that.
first year. And it was the largest selling album of the year 2 years running. So not only did it outsell everything in its opening year, it outsold everything in its second year.
Right.
It changed the way people approached making music, releasing music, distributing, marketing music, and no one ever caught up to it.
Everything.
It set the bar so high it was
Music videos,
almost unreasonable.
pick a thing. Pick a thing. Pick a thing.
No, we got to start with you and your take on this. This is like, for you, I mean, this is peak explosion of pop music, sales, MTV's about to kick in, the whole thing is going crazy.
Yeah, this, you know what's really weird for me? This whole experience with you guys, like I know everybody. This is so weird.
Yeah. Why do you think we asked you?
That's why we asked you to
to be here, bro.
I was here. I was literally here.
So I met Michael in 1973. Michael and I were seatmates on the bus. If you ever read anything or talk to Quincy or talk to anybody from that collective, they'll say, boy, when Nile Rodgers walks in the room, watch what happens to Michael. Lit up like a Christmas tree, because I'd sit there reading him comic books. When Michael dropped this record, to me, the world changed. It was a seismic shift in everything. I mean, having a black artist to a music video on the level of Thriller was just, it changed the world. I mean, you've seen how many people have, imitated the Thriller thing.
Oh no, we memorized it
from like
in the
people
living room every day.
Yeah, people in prisons, just
It
entire
was the single
populations.
greatest music video event of all time. The whole world waited for that premiere. It was midnight in New Zealand on New Year's Eve. I was in a tiny little holiday home in
New Year's Eve.
Yeah, in like the Bay of Islands, waiting for this video. Like, it changed everything.
New Year's Eve, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so I have to ask Nile, this album, Thriller, as much as people categorize it as pop, okay, and there's pop elements, there's jazz elements, there's funk elements, disco elements, there's so many elements within this. This, for Michael Jackson, right, was a deliberate, I'm going to take over the world. Right? He obviously Quincy Jones and the other musical collaborators in the project.
Rod Templeton.
Rod,
that's the one.
Yeah. So for what was happening in with musicians and recorded music at that time, when you guys heard this body of work, did everyone immediately know what it was? Like, meaning how big it was going to be?
It's hard to answer that question because she put it perfectly. You say, somebody made this?
Right.
Like,
It had never happened before.
it was so big. How big was it? It was so big that it was the biggest of the big.
Right.
It was
immeasurable. Like, you couldn't.
When he passed away, I remember listening to one of the Bee Gees say that the reason why their relationship with Michael was so great was because at one time they were sitting in that position. Where you had the biggest record in the world. And that's like an incredible thing to have the biggest record in the world. But Michael's biggest record in the world was so big that it almost made the Bee Gees' biggest record in the world seem like just another big record.
522 weeks in the Billboard 200. That's 10 years. It's 10 years.
Yeah.
Also, like every Halloween, it's back.
Right,
Like,
of course.
Yeah. It's
As a new record.
I want to say, though, we're talking about the top 5 records. You don't get Purple Rain and Thriller are so in conversation with each other.
Right.
And so much of the beauty of this like very particular special time in music is the way that these two artists elevated each other by just being competitive.
Right.
And like how important it is to have fire, to have someone that can meet you.
And then here comes Madonna, and it's
right?
on. It's just on, right? She's more badass than either of them.
I know, we walked in earlier and I was like, oh, I made like a virgin here. And I was like, oh, cool. I came here on a school field trip.
Well, this is a real moment right here, because there's definitely a lot of people who have been watching this, and we really appreciate you taking the time, in particular Maggie and Nile taking the time to help sharing this experience with us as we count down this 10. And I know a lot of you watching this will be thinking, if Thriller's not number one, what is?
Right. There you have it. We are at the #1 album, Lauryn Hill. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
I love it.
Is at the top of the 100 best albums of all time right here on Apple Music. Lauryn being a friend, the people who work on this album being friends and family, like this is so near and dear to my heart from every aspect of a kid who grew up loving R&B music, but also loving hip hop. And also loving dancehall and loving black music in general and storytelling and all of the amazing black women that have contributed stories and recorded them just for generations to have something to lock into and to hold on to. This album delivers on so many levels, and I think that's why it got voted #1.
It did. I mean, it's amazing to think that this album doesn't just resonate with the people who were around when it came out, who hold it dear, because it hasn't dated, not even just a fraction. In fact, it feels more fresh and more relevant the more you listen to it, having listened to it the whole time. But there's a lot of young people and young artists hearing it 10, 15 years after it came out, and it's becoming part of their artistic DNA. It's inspiring and influencing them, I think.
My mom used to play this record in the kitchen growing up, and it was like one of those moments where like I knew that my mom was in a really good mood if I walked in and heard like doo-wop that thing in the kitchen. And it like, her voice is so singular, and the atmosphere and character that she carries on this record is so open and so expansive and so direct. This record means so much to me that when I saw that it was on the top of this list, it made me smile too, because to have an artist like Lauryn Hill be the #1, just that means a lot.
She's amazing. This record is amazing. You put it really great. Friends and family are all involved in the making of this record. Yeah. I know so many of the people, even the generation before that contributed to this record, which is also amazing to me. I have to admit that I didn't expect it to be #1 over Thriller and over Purple Rain.
Neither did we, I don't think. I don't think we went into this knowing that either. Like Zane and I both looked at each other when we learned, and we're kind of like, but yeah.
Well, look, the list is all up for debate. And I think, but when you get to the particular areas of like 4, 3, 2, 1, it really is just microscopic differences of opinion on where things sit. And I think for the longest time, an album like Thriller has been #1 on every list. And I think what was really interesting was that it did feel like there was a shift in the way people are being inspired and influenced by music, to see Lauryn Hill just over, because remember, this album is like 25 years old. Right. And I think it's just interesting to see how it continues to find its place in people's life.
This album exemplifies and captures popular music of the last 25 years. Holistically. It's R&B. It's hip hop. It's independent woman, strong woman. It's topical. Sampling.
This may be too hot a take. There are probably more. Well, I'd say there are more people making music in the beautiful aftermath of the miseducation of Lauryn Hill than there are in the aftermath of Thriller now.
Right.
That's what I was going to say. Is that I think Thriller. It's about what a record's trying to achieve, because I think that Thriller was so much about personal achievement. Like, you have these great collaborators, but Michael was like, I'm gonna go there.
Yeah.
And Lauryn brought everybody with her.
Yeah.
She brought her community, she brought her friends, she brought her family. You're in the kitchen, you're in the living room, you hear people, you hear the voices talking. Like,
you know, it's stacked in all the right ways. And
well, and as we talked about with Beyonce, with Lemonade, this album also has New Relationship, New Baby, as well as breakup. Not just breakup of bandmates on Lost Ones where she's, you know, talking shit to Wyclef and all that, but we come to find out that there were some other relationship things going on there as, you know, as this story unfolds. So there's even those it's very personal.
This is probably the only album that you could go through that list and it embodies elements of all of these records in some respects. It's got hints of lots of the albums that are showing up there in terms of thematically, the pain of Amy Winehouse, right? The idea of painting the pictures of Kendrick or of Frank Ocean, right? The dynamics of Nirvana. I mean, there's elements in a lot of these albums that she just they just nailed it. I mean, I put it on still and I'm just stunned by the quality of the overall, really.
When this album came out, I was
39.
97?
I think you were 39.
97. So I was 12 when this came out. But I wasn't all the way outside. Like I was still a kid when Purple Rain and I was just kind of, but I was fully outside and feeling what this meant. Right. It also, you know, was at the coming off the Fugees, The Score, which we know how huge that was, right? Like this had all of the elements, and then she goes to the Grammys and
sweeps.
Cleans it up.
Takes it.
It's timeless, and it's #1 on our very first ever 100 best albums of all time. Wow. I just got to say, with the fullest heart, on behalf of everybody who's watched this or been a part of this experience, or the many people who have put a lot of time and effort into making this list, it's been a real process. Thanks to everybody. Particular thanks to Nile and to Maggie for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for indulging us and experiencing this with us. And definitely this list doesn't stay static. But there it is, the 100 best albums of all time, up on Apple Music. Go listen to all of them. That's been the whole point of this. Talk about it amongst yourselves and with your friends. And there's a lot to go and see and listen to.